Welcome back to our Learn Coding Through Using Roblox series, or whatever I've called it. Basically, we're going to go ahead and go over where we left off last time, which was with our scripts. We had a server script last time. We're going to make a local script this time that runs on the client, and I'll show you the differences between the two and how they can actually change things. Alright, so go ahead and roll the intro, and I'll see you there. Alright, so jumping off where we left last time, so I have the grow script that we made. It's a server script. We were changing the part size to a width of 40 on our x-axis there. We went over how to use variables to reference objects in the game world, as well as any values if we needed to as well. I currently have disabled this script, and that's by selecting the enabled property without a checkbox there, so that it is disabled, so that if we run the game, if we play the game, nothing's going to happen. So I do want to show, if I enable this real quick, and I play the game, that because that script is running on the server, I, as a player, am going to see that that has extended this part, right? And what that means is that anything that runs on the server is actually replicated to the client. So this is sending out all of this information to every player. It exists on the server. Every player can see it. If I want to do something from a player perspective, if it's replicated across the server, for example, my animations or emotes, right? Those are all sent to the server for the server to say, I need to send this information to every other player around, so that they can see that you're running, jumping, that they can see that you're emoting, right? So it's going to be kind of similar with scripts. Let's do a starter player script. So this will happen with the player itself. Let's go ahead and do a local script now. And we'll call this, just going to put grow in front of this. And we can now go ahead and do basically the same thing we did last time. I'm going to actually copy everything from here and paste it into here. So you'll notice also I'm leaving a blank line. It's a style thing. It really doesn't matter, but it is something that, particularly with compiled languages, that they like to have a blank line at the bottom. So call it a habit, but it is part of the style that we'll go over at some point in the future, to leave that blank line there. So just build the habit now, leave that blank line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the game. And we forgot to disable our script. So let's disable the server script. Alright, so if I run the game, you'll see that the part has not changed size, even though we did put it in this local script to change size. If we play the game, you'll see now that we get an error. This is something you'll come across with local scripts a lot. And the error is that it's saying grow part is not a valid member of the folder workspace.part folder. We're still playing the game. Let's double check. We'll open up workspace. This is from the client's perspective, so anything that's in here the client knows about. There's the part folder, and if we open that up, there's the grow part. So why didn't that work? Why didn't that script work? Well, even on line 1, right, it's failing. Let's take a look. The reason that didn't work is because this script is running as soon as the player joins the game. Now the problem with that is the player joins the game very quickly, right? They can join the game before any of this stuff loads up for them on their client. In other words, what's happening is this grow part is not loading into the game until after the player has joined the game, which means it doesn't know this grow part exists. So the way to get around that is to know the difference between when you can just access something immediately and when you need to use what's called a wait for child. So with the server, we didn't have to wait for any parts to load, and that's because everything exists for the server automatically. The server already knows about it. It's the server. The client, on the other hand, will sometimes have to wait for things to load into the game, right? To load up into the game world before it knows that they exist. And a lot of it is parts and objects that exist in the game. Things it doesn't need to wait for are the services for the game, right? Players, lighting, workspace, all that. And folders, and also any models. Not the stuff inside a model, but the model itself. A model and a folder are pretty much the same thing. They have slightly different aspects to them. But just know that the player's going to know about this folder. In fact, it even says it knows it's not a valid member of the folder workspace.part folder. So this is a common mistake I'll see a lot of people use, is they'll try to wait for the part folder. And the part folder is already there. They don't have to do that. You're not waiting for anything. Instead, we do want to wait for our grow part. So to do that, we'll go ahead and get rid of this. And instead of using a dot here to access what's within that part folder, we're going to use a colon, and we're going to do the most commonly used ones already at the top there, this wait for child. And you'll see this returns the child of an instance with the given name. If the child does not exist, it's going to yield, basically it's going to wait, right? Yield the current thread. So what that means is as the game is running, this script is going to stop executing any code. It won't execute any of this code until that wait for child has completed to return something. That could be infinitely. If I say to wait for child thing that doesn't exist, and I play, you'll actually see here that we are going to get an error after a few seconds saying infinite yield possible on thing that doesn't exist, wait for child. Reason it's doing that is because thing that doesn't exist doesn't exist. It will infinitely wait. As long as that player's in the game, this script will just sit there and wait. None of this will ever execute. So what we actually want to do is make sure that we put our grow part in there, and it will autofill for us because it still knows what's in the part folder because it's all within the game here. So now when we do this and we play, it's going to wait until that part has loaded up, and then as soon as it knows that part has, then it's going to run the actual part size change on it. So what I want to show here now is that this is definitely change size for the player. But if I jump out of the player, let's go to test and switch our current from client to server, you'll see that this part has not changed size. Aha. So that is one difference there, right? So again, whatever's happening in a local script is unknown to the server. So that's something you want to make sure. If you want something to happen for every player, you want it to happen on the server. If you want it to happen for a single player, you want it to happen individually in a local script. If you want it to happen so that the server doesn't have to worry about it, you want it to happen in a local script as well. What do I mean by that? So the server is a computer, right? Could be a group of computers, honestly, but it is typically a computer that has a certain amount of memory, a certain level of processing power, certain level of graphics capability. And what that's doing is a certain number of calculations per second. If you have the server doing everything, absolutely everything, that can start to slow the server down. The problem with that is that if the server slows down and the server lags, every player is going to experience that, and your game's going to be poorly designed, and nobody's really going to want to play that. So you can offload a lot of things onto each individual client and let your player's computer do some of that calculation, some of that processing for you. So for example, if you want to have a game where you collect coins, and you want every coin to exist individually for each player and not have to be worried about by the server, you can have your coin script end up on a local script. Every player is going to get their own coins. So even if I walk up and collect a coin, that coin's still going to exist for somebody else if they haven't collected it already. So that's kind of a nice little feature that you can put in there as well. So that's one of the, or a few of the reasons that you typically want to have separation between a local script and a server script. Now what happens if I run both of these at once? Let's change this so that it actually makes the part even bigger. Let's make it 100 studs wide, right? And let's go ahead and enable this. So if I now play the game, what do you think's going to happen? Okay, you may have seen a flash there. The player did, for a second, see that this part was 100 studs wide, and now the part is only 40 studs wide. And we can see that if we wanted to count up here, but just know that's 40 studs wide. I can go ahead and jump to the server, and you can see the 100 stud wide part, right? So that's something to note as well, is that that didn't necessarily replicate. Why not? Here's why. Because the player, their script had to wait for that part to exist for them, right? The server didn't. So the server made the change to the part immediately. And then the player came in, and if they were able to see, which they were for that split second before the script continued, then they saw that the part was at 100 wide. They found the part, the script for them then ran, and it shrunk that part back down to 40. I can do this using a wait task. So we'll go ahead and inside of our server script here, I'm going to do task.wait, and inside of these parentheses, let's wait for 5 seconds. Don't worry about that. We'll go over the task library here in the future as well. Now if I play, the server is going to wait 5 seconds, and then it's going to increase the size of the part. So now the player saw the part, increased it to 40 on their local scripts, and then after 5 seconds, the server made a new change to the part, and this time it's replicated to every player. So every player would see this because this was done on the server now. All right, so I hope that makes sense. That's a lot to kind of throw into the differences between local scripts and server scripts. We can also get around some differences if we put something in the character script service, as I mentioned. For example, your character is going to load in slower than your player. So there might be things that you will definitely have to wait for and not get an error if you're on the player, whereas on the character you might not have to wait for child. More often than not though, if you're messing with local scripts, you typically want to use this wait for child on anything that could end up not showing up for you before the script tries to do a thing to it. But otherwise, that's pretty much it for this video. We'll go ahead and end here. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, let me know how I'm doing. I'm putting a bunch of these out right now to get them going, get us kind of lifted back off the ground here, especially with the dearth of content that I had for 6 straight months. I can't believe that. Before these. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know if there's anything you want me to go over in the future. I'm also going to be doing another group of videos specifically just talking about programming and scripting, coding in general, and actually covering different programming languages over on that series. So if you're interested in that, make sure you're subscribed and go check those out as well. All right, until then, I will see you next time.